I think what you got to understand is that there's someone watching now, right, that are probably going through that tough day and could actually benefit to understand how you overcame that, because, geez, God knows we all have it.
Yeah.
So good to see you, Barsha. How's it going?
It's going really well. Thank you, Jeffrey. Really good to connect. It's been a long time since we met in person.
I know, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
crazy. And how's your new job?
New job, it's
Mhm,
really good so far, actually.
mhm.
It's been 6 months already. So time just flies, right?
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So this is very interesting, right? Um, I was in Akamai as a pre-sales engineer, and I looked after the CDN component of things, plus security, plus web security, and that's
Mhm,
where I got to know you, right?
mhm,
This is NetApp traditionally is known as storage vendor, right?
mhm.
And 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 so when I first thought of NetApp, I was like, this is storage, like is this something that I really want to do?
Mhm.
But then, the more conversations that I had with people at NetApp, and it's not it's not about storage anymore, right? You're talking about solutions, and the solutions can sit
That's
on
right.
premises or cloud, and then everybody is talking about cybersecurity anyway. And the three components, right? Storage, networking, and compute. Like all conversations in any role you are in
Mhm.
technology, it's all about that. The speeds and feeds is in the end, right, of any conversation. So
That's right. But
yeah.
what's really interesting is you described an incredible skill stack. That's the way I look at it. It's skill stack, what you've got on cybersecurity and the architecture and networking. And the way I would the metaphor I draw is like cybersecurity is like safety in the car. So right
Mhm.
now, would you buy a car that's not safe?
No, you wouldn't
Exactly. So,
ever. Yeah.
so if you have cybersecurity skills, like you would, any any other IT technology have to have cybersecurity, and if you don't have that component, then you really are asking for it. And I have to say, like IoT is probably the next attack surface. So, there's a whole lot of, I'm talking about webcams,
Fridges
and
and
fridges and locks and sensors and the likes. If they don't build cybersecurity into that, that is where we're going to pay for it when it comes. So I think you're incredibly well positioned in terms of your skill sets going into the future. Which actually reminds me, so I had a little look around your profile. I was really impressed at this video you did for UTS. I did not realize you were an international student.
yes, I was. And that video is showing my age now, but was a long time ago.
Oh, you're a baby compared to me.
We can have that discussion separately, Jeffrey.
So, okay,
um,
tell me about the experience though, because coming in as international now, I know all too well what it's like to be international. Not that I was, but I had
yeah.
a lot of friends who are,
Mhm.
right? And the reason why I say it was really impressive is because I know most international students struggle to obviously find a job later on and then stay on, and then to be as successful as you were, that's really quite, you're the exception rather than the rule. So that's why I want to
Thank
dig
you.
in a bit into, so what you did, tell me a bit about your university life and what you
Yeah.
did to get to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Mhm,
Um, so I'm originally from Nepal.
mhm,
I did Bachelor's of Engineering in Electronics in Nepal.
mhm,
There wasn't a lot of choices around what to do for masters. I did want to pursue higher studies, but at the time there wasn't a lot of opportunities in the market. Plus, there wasn't a lot of masters kind of subjects that was interesting to me at the time. So I decided to pick Australia as my, higher studies destination, and I
mhm,
came here. My family, my mom and dad, and my siblings are still there, and so it was just me. I made my passport to come to this country. You know,
mhm,
um, so yeah, and I And I know, we were talking about the other guest that you had the other day as well, who struggled as an international student, and that's a struggle all international students have, right? Like
Mm.
you do whatever job you can do at the time to sustain yourself. So
So did you
I
have to
did.
work on the side as well?
Yeah, so my journey, I did do, because as international student you can work for 20 hours. So my first role was a waitress.
Oh,
So
no
I
way.
yes, I worked in quite a lot of restaurants. It was Indian restaurant, Chinese yamcha place, and I even went registered with the agencies. You know how they
Yep.
um, office events, and they have waiting staff come to you and serve you. So I would go to, like, I don't know, 2 hours bus drive or wherever. I don't even know what those places were at the time. So I did a lot of waitressing job, and I was very lucky that I found a job within UTS. So I was part of the UTS international office. I was in the back end, admin stuff, writing um, um, offer letters to students, or when they graduate, invitation letters. So I think in that respect, I was really lucky that I studied at UTS, but I also got an opportunity to help other international students like myself, because I knew, a lot about what international students' questions would be, right? So it was
Mm.
really, really good. And I think those initial jobs that I got in Australia, I think that helped me. And I feel like, they no matter how, casual or the or not so in the field of technology they were,
Mm.
it exposed me to the culture. As a waitress, I saw so many people with so many different backgrounds, and the one thing that was really common was everybody was respectful to each other, and
Yeah.
that was I would not change that experience for anything. Like, I think
No,
I
not at
needed
all.
that. Yeah.
Well, to be honest, like I actually see that as a plus,
Yeah.
right? The fact that you did that job, you just went up a notch in my books, because they are, and you're absolutely right. It taught you a lot in terms of not just, I suppose, grit and resilience, and being able to do those things, but you also realize that it wasn't beneath you, which means that you have the right attitude and you treat people right. Now, on top of that, you learned how to treat people with respect, and obviously you also learn the people skills,
Mhm.
through and I'd hazard to say probably cultural intelligence while you're at it too. So instead of being, just a girl from Nepal, you're somebody who can connect with
Mhm.
anybody, and in the Australian context and culture. Now it's starting to make sense to me how you're able to transcend just being an international student to being, a successful young professional in Australia. So okay, so take me to the end of the UTS journey then. So after you graduated,
Yeah.
how were you able to? Did you have to leave and come back, or did you go straight into a job?
I went
Mm.
straight into a job. So once I graduated, I started applying for graduate roles. I didn't have PR at the time.
Mhm.
I was still on my international student visa, and a lot of organizations didn't accept graduate roles unless you were a PR, if not, citizenship
Wow.
as well. So there were only a few organizations that would consider you if
Hmm.
if you were still an international student, condition being that you are eligible for PR and you've applied for it on your skills basis. So Alcatel-Lucent at the time was one of those organizations who were happy to consider graduates who didn't have PR yet, but they would have applied or they were eligible. Yeah, and I think I applied to Telstra. I applied to everybody who offered, but I guess because of the compliance and all of that, some organizations can't. So yeah, it was you're not ready to right after uni. You don't know what the industry is looking for, and so you just do whatever you train to do
Hmm.
up until that point, right? So um, you know there was like 4 or 5 different rounds of interviews. The final one was where you'd have to present uh, to Alcatel people around their own strengths. So you're almost selling to them how much you know. So there was a lot of research, and they were not just looking at the content; they were also looking at how you present, right? So in that final day of that big presentation, I think we were split in two groups of 20 each, and I was the only female.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that whole day, and I ended up getting that role. We were four people hired, and I was the only female. You know, so it was yeah, and I got good feedback after that, which is really, you know, it boosts your confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I know it's an absolutely grueling process to get a graduate job, and
Yeah.
to get one without, I suppose, PR or citizenship is outstanding, right? And I think we should commend the likes of Alcatel-Lucent to have the foresight to
Yeah.
see the potential, because I do think that it's a bit of a travesty that, you know, we train, you know, Australia trains so many talented young people. You know, they come here, they pursue a higher education. We
Mhm.
train them. We have an affinity with them. They lived here for a couple of years, and then we let them get back home, and they
Yeah,
create some incredible things. You know, back in Asia and other places.
that's right.
So it's a shame that we don't sort of brain drain the world. Especially when they've already, you know, invested so much to come to us.
Mhm.
So I'm happy that you actually ended up staying, because now you're contributing to our economy. And so the other thing that I've also noticed, and you said that you already had a degree from Nepal in electrical engineering. So, you know, and you're right, like in being the only female in 20, you know, there's not a whole lot of engineers who are girls.
Mhm.
So how do you feel about being, you know, has that made it harder, or you know, do you feel like there shouldn't be any sort of discrimination per se? I mean, unfortunately, I haven't worked in the engineering world, so I
Mhm.
don't know. But I do know that, you know, there is a bit of gender imbalance there.
Mhm.
Is that by design, or, you know?
Yeah, that's, you know, that's
Mm,
been a topic of conversation almost all my life, right? And in all the companies that I've worked with, there's definitely a lot of awareness now. You know, we see a lot of articles, we see a lot of companies taking that initiative for diversity and inclusion, right? It's not just about gender anymore either. Um, yeah, I think, you know, even when I did my bachelor's in Nepal, I was one of the only seven females in a class of almost 50, right? And I thought that was
wow.
low. And then I came in to do my master's, and the proportion was still same, if not less, even, you
Mm,
know, at times. So I think it's the pipeline of female candidates. Is they, you know, I know in my school, the top of the class would always be, you know, the top three would be females.
mm,
But then by the time you go to high school, you know, the people taking on science would completely drop, or females generally. And I think that it's the idea that engineering is a hard role. You know, you still think of hard hats and outside and all of that, but it's changed so much. You
mm,
know, I don't wear hard hats. I don't, you know, but I think it's the awareness to the upcoming generation to say,
mm,
hey, have you considered engineering?
mhm,
Right. And yeah, and in my experience, you know, I think um, there's definitely a lot of conversation. There's definitely a lot of energy to support females because there's not many. But I think, you know, at times there's unconscious bias as well.
mhm.
You know,
So how
and
does that manifest in what do you mean by that, and how does it manifest in reality?
yeah. So you know, this is a yeah, okay, so let me think about how to put this, right? You know, if there is a lot of a certain kind of people, right? Like for example, a lot of for males in the industry of technology, you know, there's a whole spectrum of average, good, great, perfect, right?
Right.
And if you have the same spectrum for women, there's like, you know, in a team of 30 people, there might be only two females, if that.
Mhm. Yep.
So you think, you know, the spectrum's so small, you know, and so there's not a lot of room uh, for you to not be great. Because if you're not great, it shows. There's nowhere to hide. You can't. Just
I
stay,
think I know what you're getting at. Yeah. So
you know what I
basically,
mean?
because of your visibility, you almost don't have the permission to be mediocre.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I mean, I can kind of relate to that because I remember being the first Asian kid in class back in the
Mm.
80s. And it's almost like you can't be badly behaved, because if you are, you're not just, shame to the family, you're ashamed to your race, so
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. So you almost feel like there's added pressure to be good at what you do,
Like
because you're
really,
almost,
really good,
yeah,
right? Like
really good.
like
Okay.
it's not even being mediocre or bad. It's about, I feel like there's a pressure, and I think women generally do take a lot of pressure. They're, they self-criticize a lot more.
Mm,
I feel like in, the conversations that I've had, and then there's this added pressure that if you're not great, what are you even doing here? I feel like there's not a lot of room for a female in technology to be an average person,
mm.
in
But
terms
can't
of
you just love
visibility.
what you do? Can't you just love, do you enjoy engineering? I mean,
Yes.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but can't you just be someone that is passionate about what you do? You love what you do.
Yes.
Why do you have to feel like you have to be outstanding in order to justify doing something you love?
Hmm. That's a really good question, isn't it? I think so. Yeah, and it could be just a perception thing.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it
Mm-hmm.
could be just a perception thing, and it may be something that I need to overcome, to not be impacted or affected by what other people think, right? And
Mm,
still being a human, it kind of affects you at times. So you're absolutely right. You can be passionate and you can keep doing what you're doing, um, and not seek approval from other people. And it's great if you can start your own thing. You can start your own initiatives. But if
mm.
you're in a corporate world, if you're dealing with other people, I think it's very difficult to avoid at times.
Yeah. Look, I actually think that it's probably more on an individual level. So you might be
Correct.
just someone who demands a lot of yourself.
Hmm.
And just because you happen to be female, you believe that there's that additional responsibility to represent. And I'm sure you feel the same way about being from Nepal as well, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, and there is an element, as we discussed, of cultural intelligence in understanding how certain cultural values and traits and programming affects how you look at things and think about things.
Hmm.
And in fact, um, there's that quote I put up on LinkedIn a while back about how it's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you particularly resonate with that, and I understand exactly why. And it's a lot to do with the values that our cultures tend to, I suppose, emphasize,
Hmm.
right? This idea of humility, this idea of understanding the collective, the collective good, and this need to, you know, I suppose to recognize the team, when you succeed, and you sort of look at yourself when you take responsibility when you fail, right? But
Hmm.
yet, I see that as great leadership. If you have that value, and I certainly think that that's something that should be universal.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
Mm.
100% agreed.
Yeah, but it's not always the case. You see, this is the
Yeah.
way we
Yeah.
struggle, right? I
Yeah.
think there is a bit of this discrepancy between the East and the West, where you know, in the East, you're not a good leader unless you are humble
Hmm.
and understand that. But in the West, you almost have to have so much self confidence that you have to keep promoting
Yeah.
yourself. Mm,
Exactly. I think it's the confidence factor as well. And sometimes you're really high, and
mm,
then sometimes when you're not that high and you're a bit low, and then what other people say or do impacts you a lot more, right? So, and I think it's definitely the confidence factor, I think. And it comes and goes, right? Like, it depends on so many different situations in your life. So you can't be always high, and
no.
then that's when if something happens, it could impact you a lot more.
And I think another thing I've really noticed about you is your ability to just keep going when things are tough, right? um, you know like just following what you've done in your career, it shouldn't
Hmm.
surely it wasn't an easy journey. Like being, so being overcoming the odds from international student
Hmm.
to working in a field where you're the only female engineer, and there are all these things that you have to overcome.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, you got to learn everything else technical as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's your secret? How did you keep up?
Yeah. Okay. I think my secret is like I said, the culture and values that I've got from my parents and my culture. But I think personally as well, I'm not the kind of person to give up.
Mm,
You know, if if I have a struggle in my life, it's something that I'll take head on, and I'll give it my all.
hmm.
And then if I fail, I fail. I'll just move on.
No
Life's
regrets.
no
Mm.
regrets. I tried my best, right? And if that doesn't work, hey, it's not the end of life, you know.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
But but it shows. You see, I really respect that, because there's a lot of people who would rather take the easy route and just walk away.
Yeah.
you know but I love the fact that you try, and if you fail, you have no regrets. Sure, that's not easy, but the thing
Yeah.
is, what's on the other end? And I think you deserve everything that you got, right?
Yeah.
Because you had to put in that much for it. That's what earns respect. That's what gives you meaning. And ultimately, guess what? It's not necessarily the spoils of that success. It's the fact that you have to go through all that.
Yeah.
That is what gives you, that's why you feel good about what you've achieved.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's at the end of the day, it's almost like me looking back at myself.
Mhm.
And if there were a struggle to see that I went through it, I
Mhm.
went through the thick of it, and I didn't give up, because I want to be that for myself.
Mm.
Every single time, like, I want to be proud of myself if I when I look back at it 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or yesterday. And
Mhm.
if there were a challenge, I would want to know, the future self would want to know that I went through it, irrespective of how I felt,
I
you know?
love it. I love that answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, the challenge, yeah, the journey is the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
So one last question. So now that you're a mother, has that changed your perspective on life? Do you feel that all of a sudden that there's all this extra weight because now you have to succeed for your family?
No, it's I think I'm very lucky that I have family support here. My in-laws are here, and so I've got that family support, and I have my parents in Nepal who I communicate with very regularly. And I think there's actually a little less pressure on me now.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm still passionate in my career. I still want to achieve things.
Mhm.
But because of my experience, I know that if I fail, I don't have to beat myself up.
Mhm.
And it's I know it's up to me to bring that ease in my life. Like, words come to words, like, I could take a break, and I
Mhm.
can just regroup and rethink and reprioritize. I've got a baby to look after, and I want him to look up to me.
Mhm.
Who am I being, so that he's proud of me as much as I'm proud of myself, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I want him to live a life of ease, in
Mhm.
mind. I want him to think that anything that life brings to you,
Mhm.
you can take it and you can grow from it,
Mhm.
and so I think in that respect, just thinking of who I am, to my son, I think that's kind of lessened the pressure for me now.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right, that's an interesting insight, because usually, I was actually more expecting that you want to become this role model for your son. So
Yeah.
it's almost like you have to show him how it's done. But no, that's a really interesting insight, because what that also means is that because you know that you're always you're because of what you all mean to your son, it's
Yeah.
almost like it lessens the need for other things you need to sort of to prove that you're a success, right?
Yeah.
Like you've always got your family. Yeah, and I love that, because I think that's really important,
Mhm.
to have a well-rounded being. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's such an interesting insight there. So Oh, that is lovely. Now, well, it's been really good catching up with you, and good to. Thanks for sharing so much of your journey. You know, I'm always very interested in how people got to where they got to, and you're certainly one exceptional young lady. So, congratulations.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you for your time, and it's been a very, very interesting conversation. Like, very good conversation. Thank you, and I love the work you're doing. You know, with the professional development organization and all the podcasts and conversations that you bring to your wider network. It's amazing. It's very refreshing. So thank you for having me be a part of it. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and we'll hope to catch up again.
Yes,
All
absolutely.
right, take care.